In the vast darkness between stars, there are calls for help that echo through the void, desperate pleas from dying worlds transmitted on frequencies reserved for allies and friends. The Galactic Coalition had protocols for these distress signals, carefully crafted agreements about who responds to whom based on species compatibility, territorial boundaries, and diplomatic relations. But sometimes, the universe has a twisted sense of humor. When the peaceful research station orbiting Kepler 442b sent out their carefully coded SOS, a mathematically precise plea directed toward their Altarian allies, they expected salvation to arrive in the form of sleek diplomatic vessels bearing translucent-skinned beings who communicated through harmonic frequencies and solved conflicts with meditation circles. What they got instead was something that made the approaching pirate fleet look like a minor inconvenience. The humans had intercepted the signal, and they were already on their way. Dr. Zephi pressed her delicate four-fingered hand against the observation deck's reinforced viewing panel, watching the stars wheel slowly past as Research Station Harmony 7 continued its peaceful orbit around the gas giant below. The Kepler system had been her home for 3 years now, a sanctuary of scientific pursuit far from the political complexities of the inner coalition worlds. The station housed 47 researchers from 12 different species, all united in their quest to understand the unique atmospheric phenomena of Kepler 4.2b. It was important work, groundbreaking even, but hardly the sort of thing that would attract unwanted attention from the galaxy's more unsavory elements, which made the approaching fleet of 17 warships all the more concerning. "Status report," Zephi called to her assistant, a young Centaurian named Clix, whose natural telepathic abilities made him invaluable in coordinating the station's multicultural research teams. Clix's large, dark eyes reflected the bridge's ambient lighting as he consulted his console. "The vessels are definitely military-grade, Dr. Zephi. Their energy signatures match known pirate configurations, specifically the Void Reapers clan. They've been increasingly bold in this sector over the past 6 months." The Altarian researcher felt her stomach drop. The Void Reapers were notorious throughout the Outer Rim territories, known for their brutal efficiency in stripping research stations and cargo vessels of anything valuable before leaving the crews to drift in space. Harmony 7 might not carry traditional cargo, but their research data, refined materials, and advanced equipment would fetch considerable prices on the black market. "Distance and time to intercept?" she asked. The part of her already knew the answer would be grim. 4 hours, 17 minutes at their current approach vector. They're not trying to hide their intentions. Full military formation, weapons-powered, jamming our long-range communications. Zephay's graceful neck sagged. 4 hours wasn't enough time for any coalition patrol to reach them, even if they could get a message through the jamming field. The nearest military installation was 6 hours away at best, and that assumed someone was already prepared to respond immediately. "What about the research vessel docked at Bay 7? Asked Dr. Morthan, the station's Regelian chief of security. His insectoid features showed the strain of trying to coordinate a defense with virtually no defensive capabilities. The Stellar Wanderer has basic shields and life support, but it's built for deep space observation, not combat. Against 17 military-grade raiders, it would last approximately 43 seconds. The bridge fell into the kind of silence that accompanies the recognition of impending doom. Harmony 7 had been constructed as a research facility, not a fortress. Their shields could protect against cosmic radiation and small debris, but they were never designed to withstand concentrated weapons fire from an entire pirate fleet. "Send a distress signal," Zephi said finally. "Direct it toward the Altarian Collective on the Coalition emergency frequency. Include our research data as an attachment. If we don't survive this, at least our work won't die with us." Clix's fingers danced across his console with practiced efficiency. Signal composed and ready for transmission. "Should I include our current tactical situation?" "Everything. Ship configurations, estimated arrival time, our defensive capabilities. If anyone receives this, I want them to know exactly what they're walking into." The transmission burst outward into the void, a carefully crafted plea for assistance encoded in mathematical sequences that would identify the sender and their plight to any coalition vessel monitoring the emergency frequencies. It was a standard protocol, developed over centuries of interstellar cooperation, a civilized way of asking for help in an uncivilized galaxy. What they didn't know was that their signal was intercepted not just by its intended recipients, but by a monitoring station on the edge of human space. The Sol Defense Network had been expanding its listening posts steadily over the past 2 decades, partly for early warning against potential threats, but mostly out of humanity's insatiable curiosity about what was happening in the galaxy around them. Monitoring Station Echo 9, positioned at the outermost edge of human territory, picked up the distress call within minutes of its transmission. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez was pulling the night shift when the signal came through, and she almost dismissed it as routine chatter between Coalition species. The humans weren't technically part of the Galactic Coalition membership required what the bureaucrats called civilization compatibility standards, which humanity apparently failed to meet due to their planet of origin being classified as a class 1-2 Deathworld. But something about the mathematical precision of the distress call caught her attention. She'd studied xenolinguistics at Lunar University, and the elegant structure of Voltarian communication had always fascinated her. This wasn't routine chatter. This was a genuine emergency. "Hey, Commander," she called to the officer of the watch, Commander James Holland, a grizzled veteran of the Proxima border conflicts. "You need to see this." Holland ambled over to her station, coffee mug in hand. At 45, he'd seen enough action to recognize when one of his people had found something significant. "What do you have, Martinez?" "Distress call from a research station in the Kepler system. 17 pirate vessels 4 hours out. They're asking for coalition assistance." The commander's expression hardened. Pirates were a plague throughout the Outer Rim territories, preying on civilian vessels and research installations with virtual impunity. The coalition's response was usually diplomatic in nature. Negotiations, mediators, sometimes economic sanctions against the pirates' homeworld if they could be identified. "Not our jurisdiction," Holland said, but his tone suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with that assessment. "Sir, with respect, they're 4 hours from being slaughtered. The nearest coalition patrol is probably twice that far away, if there's anyone available at all." Holland was quiet for a long moment, staring at the tactical display that showed the research station's position relative to known coalition and human territories. Harmony 7 was technically in neutral space, but it was closer to human territory than to any coalition world. "How long would it take us to get a response force there?" he asked finally. Martinez's fingers flew across her console, calculating jump routes and fleet positions. "The Retribution is on patrol in the Vega system. With a full combat group, they could reach Kepler in 2 hours and 40 minutes. That gives them over an hour to prepare for whatever's coming." Holland set down his coffee and straightened his uniform. "Get me Captain Reynolds on quantum entanglement communication, priority alpha." Within minutes, the quantum communication link connected Echo 9 to the bridge of the UES Retribution, a Titan-class heavy cruiser that served as the flagship for Patrol Group 7. Captain Diana Reynolds appeared on the main screen, her no-nonsense expression suggesting she was already expecting bad news. "Commander Holland, what do you have for me?" "Pirate attack on a civilian research station, Captain. 17 raiders, 4 hours out from target. Research station has requested coalition assistance, but we're closer than anyone else who might respond." Reynolds was quiet for a moment, and Holland could practically see her mind working through the tactical implications. The Retribution was designed to punch well above its weight class, but 17-1 odds were challenging even for human military doctrine. "What's the composition of my available forces?" she asked. "Full combat group, ma'am. Retribution, destroyers Defiance and Vengeance, frigate Determination, and support vessel logistics. Total complement of 6,000 personnel, full fighter squadrons, and enough firepower to glass a small moon." A slight smile played at the corners of Reynolds' mouth. "And we're dealing with pirates, not military-grade opposition." "Affirmative, Captain. Void Reaper's clan, based on energy signatures. They're notorious for being brutal but not particularly sophisticated tactically." "Understood. Set course for the Kepler system, maximum burn. And Commander, send a message to that research station. Tell them help is on the way." As the quantum link closed, Holland turned back to Martinez. "Compose a response to that distress call. Standard diplomatic language, but make it clear that assistance has been dispatched." Martinez nodded and began crafting the response. It was a delicate balance. They needed to reassure the research station that help was coming without revealing too much about human capabilities or intentions. The coalition species had specific ideas about how conflict should be resolved, and overwhelming application of superior firepower wasn't usually on the approved list. Back on Harmony 7. Clicks nearly fell out of his chair when the response came through. "Dr. Zephi, we're receiving a reply to our distress signal." The Altarian researcher rushed to his console, her heart racing with hope. "From the collective fleet?" "No, ma'am. The transmission origin is unusual. It's coming from the direction of Sol System." Zephi frowned. Sol System was the homeworld of the humans, the species that had been repeatedly denied coalition membership due to their planet of origin being classified as incompatible with civilized spaceflight. Earth was a class 1-2 Deathworld, after all. A planet so hostile to life that the emergence of any sapient species should have been statistically impossible. That can't be right. Run a diagnostic on the communication array. I've already checked, Doctor. The signal is definitely coming from human space. And there's more. It's not just an acknowledgement. They're saying assistance has been dispatched. The bridge fell silent again, but this time it wasn't the silence of despair. It was the silence of confusion mixed with a growing sense of unease. Humans don't have the capability for rapid response across interstellar distances, Dr. Morthen said finally. Their technology is primitive, their ships are crude, and their understanding of galactic politics is rudimentary at best. HFY nodded slowly, though something nagged at the back of her mind. The Coalition's assessment of human capabilities was based largely on theoretical models and limited observation. Humans had been denied membership so consistently that there had been little incentive for detailed study of their actual technological development. Perhaps they've misunderstood our situation, she said. They might be offering diplomatic assistance rather than military intervention. Or they're sending whatever ships they have available, regardless of capability, Clicks added. It might be a gesture of goodwill rather than an actual rescue attempt. The rational part of HFY's mind agreed with this assessment. Humans were known for their emotional decision-making and their tendency to act before fully understanding the consequences. It seemed entirely possible that they had received the distress call and responded with whatever resources were available, regardless of whether those resources were actually sufficient to address the threat. But there was something else nagging at her, a half-remembered conversation from a conference on xenosociology she'd attended several years ago. A colleague had mentioned that human ship design seemed unusually robust for a species with limited interstellar experience, and that their energy signatures suggested power generation capabilities that didn't match their supposed technological level. At the time, she'd dismissed it as speculation. Now, with 17 pirate ships approaching and an unknown human force somewhere in the void between them and destruction, she found herself hoping that her colleague had been right. 3 hours and 12 minutes until the pirates arrived. 2 hours and 17 minutes until the humans reached the system, assuming, of course, that the humans were actually coming, that they had the capability to make good on their promise, and that their idea of assistance matched Harmony, Seven's idea of survival. As HFY watched the stars wheel past the observation deck, she reflected on the curious ways that fate seemed to operate in the galaxy. They had sent their distress call to allies, to species they understood and trusted, following protocols that had been refined over centuries of civilized interaction. Instead, help was coming from the one species in local space that the Coalition had deemed too dangerous, too unpredictable, and too primitive to be trusted with membership in galactic civilization. She was about to find out just how wrong that assessment had been. Captain Diana Reynolds stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the tactical display as her combat group dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. The transition from faster-than-light travel to normal space was seamless, a testament to the engineering capabilities that had developed over humanity's brief but intensive period of interstellar expansion. "Tactical, give me a full system scan," she ordered, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had commanded starships through 3 separate conflicts. Lieutenant Commander Torres, the ship's tactical officer, worked quickly at his station. "Ma'am, I'm reading 17 vessels in formation approaching the research station. Configuration matches intelligence files for Void Reaper pirate vessels. 3 heavy raiders, 8 medium attack craft, and 6 light interceptors. They're maintaining standard pirate doctrine formation. Time to intercept? At current approach vectors, the pirates will reach the station in 57 minutes. We can intercept in 42 minutes if we maintain current acceleration." Reynolds nodded, her mind already working through the tactical possibilities. 17 ships sounded like overwhelming odds to most species in the galaxy, but humans had been fighting against overwhelming odds since before they'd left their homeworld. The key was not to fight fair, it was to fight smart. Communications open a channel to all ships in the combat group. The quantum entanglement communicators linked the 5 ships of Patrol Group 7 instantaneously, regardless of distance or interference. On her main screen, Reynolds could see the faces of her 4 subordinate commanders: Captain Morrison of the Defiance, Captain Chen of the Vengeance, Commander Patel of the Determination, and Lieutenant Commander Jackson of the Logistics. "Gentlemen, we have 17 pirates about to attack a civilian research station. Our mission is to prevent that attack and ensure the safety of the researchers. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. These are pirates attacking civilians, so we don't need to worry about diplomatic niceties." Captain Morrison, a veteran of the Centauri campaign, leaned forward on his screen. Ma'am, what's our approach? Standard fleet action, or are we going with something more creative? Reynolds smiled, the expression carrying more menace than warmth. Creative, Captain. The pirates are expecting to face either no resistance at all, or possibly a single coalition patrol vessel. They're not expecting to encounter human military doctrine. She touched her console, transferring tactical data to all ships in the group. Here's what we're going to do. Determination and logistics will hang back at maximum sensor range and coordinate electronic warfare. I want every pirate ship blinded, confused, and preferably convinced that they're facing a much larger force than they actually are. Commander Patel nodded from the determination. We can generate ghost images for at least 50 additional vessels, ma'am. Make it look like they're facing a full battle fleet instead of a patrol group. Excellent. Defiance and Vengeance will approach from the asteroid belt, using the gas giant's magnetic field to mask their signatures until the last possible moment. When they emerge, I want them hitting the pirate flanks hard and fast. Captain Chen of the Vengeance looked pleased. Woolpack tactics against a superior force. Classic human strategy. Exactly. Meanwhile, Retribution will approach directly, making no attempt to hide our presence. I want the pirates to see us coming and focus their attention on what appears to be a single heavy cruiser foolish enough to take on their entire fleet. The plan was audacious even by human standards, but that was exactly what made it likely to succeed. Pirate tactics were generally straightforward. Overwhelm the target with superior numbers, minimize losses, maximize profit. They weren't prepared for an enemy that would deliberately appear outgunned while secretly coordinating a complex multi-vector assault. Questions? Reynolds asked. Rules of engagement for survivors? Captain Morrison asked. Standard pirate protocols, or are we making examples? We're not barbarians, Captain, despite what the Coalition might think. Standard protocols: disable their ships, accept surrenders, and turn prisoners over to the appropriate authorities. But if they want to fight to the death, we're happy to accommodate them. The conference ended, and Reynolds turned her attention back to the tactical display. The research station was a small cluster of lights in the darkness, utterly defenseless against the approaching pirate fleet. The station's inhabitants had no idea that their distress call had reached the one species in local space that considered 17-to-1 odds to be an interesting tactical challenge rather than an impossible situation. On Harmony 7, Dr. Zephay was trying to maintain calm among the research staff while privately calculating the odds of their survival. The pirate fleet was now clearly visible on their long-range sensors, a menacing collection of angular, aggressive shapes bristling with weapons and armor plating. Any word from our human rescuers? She asked Clicks, though she tried to keep the skepticism out of her voice. Nothing since the initial response, Doctor, but I am detecting some unusual energy signatures at the edge of the system. It could be ships dropping out of hyperspace, but the readings are strange. Dr. Morthen looked up from the defensive preparations he'd been coordinating. Strange how? The energy signatures are much more powerful than I would expect from human vessels. According to Coalition intelligence files, human ships use primitive fusion reactors and simple chemical propulsion systems. These readings suggest something much more advanced. Zephay felt a flicker of hope mixed with confusion. If the humans had been understating their technological capabilities, it might explain their confidence in responding to 17 pirate ships. But why would they hide their true advancement from the Coalition? Could the readings be from Coalition vessels? She asked. Perhaps the Altarians received our distress call after all. Click shook his head. The signatures don't match any known Coalition configurations. These are definitely human designs, but they're generating power levels that should be impossible with their supposed technology. On the main screen, the pirate fleet continued its inexorable approach. 43 minutes until they arrived. Whatever was happening at the edge of the system, it needed to happen soon. Aboard the lead pirate vessel, a converted heavy freighter called Blood Price, Captain Korvac was reviewing the tactical situation with growing satisfaction. The research station appeared to be completely defenseless, exactly as intelligence had suggested. 47 researchers, minimal security, no military escort. Any response to our approach? He asked his sensor operator, a thin Retharian whose multiple eyes allowed him to monitor several displays simultaneously. Nothing, Captain. The station is maintaining standard orbit. No evasive maneuvers, no defensive posture. They did transmit a distress call earlier, but it was directed toward Altarian space. Response time from Coalition forces would be at least 6 hours. Korvac nodded, his scarred features showing satisfaction. The Void Reapers had been operating in this sector for 8 months, and they'd learned to time their attacks precisely. Strike fast, grab everything valuable, and disappear before any organized response could arrive. Begin target analysis, he ordered. I want to know the exact configuration of that station's docking bays, computer cores, and material storage areas. This should be a quick extraction. What Captain Korvac didn't know was that his fleet was being observed by sensors far more sophisticated than anything he could imagine. The UES Retribution was tracking every ship in the pirate formation, analyzing their weapons, armor, and probable crew complements. The human battle computers were calculating firing solutions, escape routes, and casualty projections with inhuman precision. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Commander Torres reported, "detailed scans complete. The pirate vessels are exactly what we expected. Converted civilian ships with military-grade weapons bolted on. Dangerous to unprotected targets, but not designed for ship-to-ship combat against military opposition. Crew complements? Estimated 700 to 900 pirates total across all vessels. The 3 heavy raiders are carrying the bulk of their forces, probably planning to board the station rather than simply destroying it." Reynolds nodded. Pirates were ultimately businessmen, albeit violent ones. They wanted to capture the research station intact, strip it of everything valuable, and possibly ransom the researchers back to their respective governments. Destruction was wasteful unless absolutely necessary. "All ships, report status." The responses came back quickly. Defiance and Vengeance were in position behind the asteroid belt, their stealth systems engaged. Determination and Logistics were coordinating their electronic warfare packages, ready to flood pirate sensors with false information. Retribution was approaching openly, appearing for all the world like a single ship responding to a distress call. 30 minutes to optimal firing position, Torres reported. "Very good. Communications. Prepare a broadband transmission to the research station. Let them know help has arrived." The transmission that reached Harmony 7 was brief but reassuring. "Research Station Harmony. 7, this is Captain Reynolds of the Earth vessel Retribution. We have received your distress call and are moving to intercept the hostile fleet. Please maintain your current position and prepare for possible combat in your vicinity. We'll have you safe shortly." Zephyr Hayes stared at the communication display in amazement. "Earth vessel Retribution? That implies they have more than one ship." "Doctor," Clicks called from his sensor station, "I'm detecting the human vessel on long-range scans. It's substantial." "Oh, approximately. Approximately 800 meters in length, heavily armed, and generating enough power to supply a medium-sized colony. This is not the primitive technology the Coalition assessments described." Mortham looked up from his preparations. One ship against 17 pirates is still hopeless odds, regardless of how advanced it might be. But Zeph Howe was beginning to suspect that there was more to this situation than apparent. The humans' confidence, their willingness to respond to a distress call in neutral space, and now the revelation that their ships were far more advanced than Coalition intelligence suggested, it painted a picture of a species that had been seriously underestimated. "Clicks, can you get detailed scans of the human vessel?" "I'm trying, Doctor, but there's something interfering with our sensors. Almost like electronic countermeasures, but more sophisticated than anything I've seen before." What they were detecting were the early effects of the electronic warfare packages being deployed by the Determination and Logistics. Human military doctrine emphasized information warfare as much as direct combat, and the research station's sensors were being subtly influenced to see only what the humans wanted them to see. Captain Korvac was experiencing similar sensor difficulties aboard Blood Price, though he was interpreting them differently. "Sensor efficiency is down to 60%, his operator reported. "Multiple ghost contacts, intermittent signature blurring, could be solar interference from the gas giant's magnetosphere. Or someone is jamming us," Korvac growled. "Increase scanning frequency and switch to backup arrays. I want to know if there are any surprises waiting for us." The backup sensors immediately detected the approaching Retribution, and Korvac's mood shifted from caution to amusement. "Single contact, bearing 271 Mark IV. Heavy cruiser configuration, but the design is unfamiliar. Could be a Coalition patrol vessel, but the energy signature is wrong." "Orders, Captain." Korvac considered the situation. A single heavy cruiser was a significant threat, but not against 17 ships. Even if it was more advanced than their own vessels, the math was simple. They had overwhelming numerical superiority. "Signal the fleet. Battle Formation Alpha. 3 heavy raiders will engage the cruiser directly while the medium attack craft flank from both sides. Light interceptors will continue toward the station and secure it while we deal with this interruption." It was a textbook pirate response to unexpected opposition. Use superior numbers to overwhelm the threat while continuing with the primary objective. Against most opponents, it would have been an effective strategy. Against humans, it was exactly what Captain Reynolds had been hoping for. "They're taking the bait," Torres reported. "Pirate fleet is splitting formation. 10 ships moving to engage us directly, 7 continuing toward the station." "Perfect. Signal Defiance and Vengeance, execute flanking maneuver in 3 minutes. Determination, begin full electronic warfare deployment." I want those pirates completely blind before we start shooting. The space around Kepler 442b suddenly erupted with sensor ghosts, false signals, and electromagnetic interference. From the pirates' perspective, the single human cruiser had suddenly become a dozen ships, then 20, then 50. Their targeting computers couldn't lock onto anything, their communications were being jammed, and their formation was dissolving into chaos as individual captains tried to respond to threats that might or might not exist. What in the void is happening? Korvac shouted as his tactical display dissolved into electronic snow. Unknown, Captain. Massive jamming, multiple false contacts, our targeting systems are completely confused. Switch to manual targeting and close to visual range. We'll do this the old-fashioned way. But as Blood Price and her escorts closed the distance to the human cruiser, they encountered something that no pirate in the Outer Rim had ever faced before: the concentrated firepower of a human heavy warship designed specifically for ship-to-ship combat. The Retribution opened fire at maximum range, her particle beam arrays and missile batteries targeting the three heavy raiders with mathematical precision. The first salvo struck Blood Price amidships, her converted civilian armor no match for military-grade weaponry. The ship's hull buckled and atmosphere began venting from multiple breaches. Return fire. All ships, concentrate on that cruiser. The remaining pirates opened fire with everything they had, but their shots were scattered and ineffective. The electronic warfare was still disrupting their targeting systems, and the Retribution's defensive screens were absorbing or deflecting most of the incoming fire. That was when the real surprise came. From behind the asteroid belt, Defiance and Vengeance emerged like hunting wolves, their weapons already locked onto the pirates' flanks. The 7 ships that had continued toward Harmony, 7 suddenly found themselves under attack from 2 directions, their formation crumbling under the precise coordinated fire of ships designed for exactly this kind of engagement. Captain Reynolds watched the tactical display with professional satisfaction as her combat group systematically dismantled the pirate fleet. It wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration of what happened when technologically advanced, professionally trained, and tactically sophisticated forces encountered opportunistic raiders who had grown overconfident from preying on defenseless targets. 17 pirate vessels, she murmured to Torres. I was expecting this to be more challenging. Within 12 minutes of the engagement beginning, 9 pirate ships had been destroyed outright, 6 were disabled and drifting, and 2 had managed to escape into hyperspace. A fact that Reynolds noted with mild disappointment but accepted as tactically inevitable. The research station was safe, the pirates had been dealt with decisively, and humanity had just announced its presence in local space in a way that would be very difficult for the Coalition to ignore. The silence that followed the battle was profound, broken only by the gentle hum of life support systems aboard Harmony 7. Doctor. Zeph Hayes stood at the observation deck, staring out at the debris field that had, minutes before, been 17 pirate vessels intent on destroying everything she held dear. The human ships hung in the void like patient predators, their angular hulls reflecting the distant light of Kepler's star. They made no aggressive moves toward the research station, but their presence was unmistakably powerful, a reminder that the galaxy's balance of power had just shifted in ways that the Coalition's bureaucrats had never anticipated. Incoming transmission from the human flagship, Clix announced, his voice carrying a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Put it through, Zeph Hay replied, smoothing her robes and trying to compose herself. First contact with humanity had not gone according to any protocol she'd studied. Captain Reynolds' image appeared on the main screen, and Zeph Hay was struck by how utterly ordinary she looked. Human features were similar enough to Altairarian that they fell within acceptable parameters for communication, but there was something in the woman's eyes, a calm confidence that spoke of someone accustomed to making life-and-death decisions, that marked her as distinctly different from the diplomatic species of the Coalition. Doctor. Zeph Hay, I presume? I'm Captain Diana Reynolds of the Earth Defense Force. Are you and your people unharmed? We are all safe, Captain Reynolds. Thanks to your intervention, Zeph Hay paused, searching for the right words. I must admit we were not expecting such a rapid or decisive response. A slight smile played at the corners of Reynolds' mouth. I imagine not. The Coalition's intelligence files on human capabilities are somewhat outdated. Outdated seems like an inadequate term. Dr. Morton interjected from his position near the communications console. Our assessments indicated that human technology was primitive, your fleet capabilities limited, and your understanding of galactic politics rudimentary. Those assessments were correct, Reynolds replied calmly. 5 years ago. The Bridge of Harmony. 7 fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. 5 years was barely a moment in galactic terms. insignificant to species that measured technological advancement in centuries or millennia. For humans to have advanced from primitive spaceflight to commanding fleets capable of defeating 17 military vessels in such a short time span was unprecedented. "Captain," HFY said carefully, "would you be willing to come aboard our station? I believe we have much to discuss, and I suspect that both our species have been operating under incomplete information." Reynolds nodded. "I'll bring a small diplomatic party. We have some cleaning up to do first. There are survivors from the pirate vessels who need medical attention and secure custody." As the quantum link closed, HFY turned to her staff. "I want detailed scans of those human ships. Everything our sensors can detect. Power generation, weapon systems, defensive capabilities, crew complements. We need to understand what we're dealing with." "Doctor," Click said quietly, "I don't think we want to be caught scanning them too aggressively. They just demonstrated that their electronic warfare capabilities are far superior to ours. If they choose to interpret detailed scans as hostile intent, the point was well taken. The humans had shown remarkable restraint so far, but they had also demonstrated the capability to reduce harmony, 7, to expanding plasma if they chose to do so. Diplomatic caution was definitely advisable." 2 hours later, Captain Reynolds and a small party materialized in Harmony, 7's main transporter chamber. The human delegation consisted of the captain herself, her first officer Commander Sarah Kim, and a diplomatic attaché named Dr. Marcus Webb, who had apparently been aboard the support vessel for exactly this type of situation. What struck HFY immediately was how prepared they seemed. The humans weren't improvising their way through an unexpected first contact. They had protocols, specialists, and equipment specifically designed for interacting with coalition species. This suggested a level of planning and preparation that contradicted everything the coalition believed about human capabilities and intentions. "HFY," Reynolds said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I know this situation is somewhat unusual." "Unusual is one way to phrase it," HFY replied, carefully mimicking the handshake. The human's grip was firm but not aggressive, another small indication of diplomatic sophistication. "Captain, I hope you'll forgive my directness, but I must ask, how long has humanity possessed the technological capabilities we witnessed today?" Dr. Webb stepped forward, a thin man with intelligent eyes and the bearing of someone accustomed to navigating complex political situations. "Dr. HFY, that's a complicated question. The short answer is that human technology has been advancing at an exponential rate since we began serious interstellar exploration. The longer answer involves some uncomfortable truths about the Coalition's assessment methods and our own strategic decisions regarding information sharing." "You've been deliberately concealing your capabilities," Dr. Morthen stated. "It wasn't a question. Not concealing," Reynolds corrected. "Simply not volunteering information that wasn't requested." The Coalition's initial contact protocols were quite clear about the requirements for membership. When we failed to meet those requirements, we focused our efforts on internal development rather than external diplomacy. Commander Kim consulted a datapad and looked up at the assembled researchers. "Your distress call was the 47th Coalition emergency transmission that human monitoring stations have intercepted in the past 18 months. This is the first time we've been in position to respond effectively." The implications of that statement sent a chill through HFY's mind. 47 emergencies, and the Coalition's response had apparently been inadequate in all cases. Meanwhile, humanity had been quietly building the capability to respond to such situations while being excluded from the very organization that was supposed to coordinate galactic security. "How many ships does Earth currently have in service?" she asked. Reynolds exchanged a glance with her diplomatic attaché. "That information is classified, but I can tell you that today's engagement involved less than 1% of our current fleet strength." The bridge fell silent again. If 5 ships represented less than 1% of human naval capacity, then humanity possessed a fleet numbering in the hundreds of vessels. For a species that had been dismissed as primitive and technologically backward, it was a staggering revelation. "Why reveal this now?" HFY asked. "You could have continued developing in isolation, building your capabilities without interference from the Coalition's bureaucracy." Dr. Webb smiled, and there was something distinctly predatory about the expression. "Because isolation was never our goal, Dr. HFY. Humanity has always been interested in joining the galactic community. The question is whether that community is interested in reforming itself to accommodate species that don't fit neatly into existing categories." "You're talking about challenging the Coalition's membership requirements," Dr. Morthen said. "I'm talking about demonstrating that the Coalition's membership requirements are based on outdated assumptions about the relationship between planetary environment and technological capability. Webb replied. Earth is indeed a class 1-2 death world. Humanity did indeed evolve under conditions that most coalition species would consider incompatible with sapient development. But those same conditions also produced a species uniquely suited to certain types of challenges. Reynolds gestured toward the observation deck, where the debris from the pirate fleet was still visible. Today's engagement is an example. Coalition response to piracy typically involves negotiation, mediation, and economic sanctions. These approaches work well when dealing with rational actors who can be influenced through diplomatic pressure. But pirates are not rational actors, SciFi said, understanding beginning to dawn. Exactly. Pirates respond to force, or the credible threat of force. The Coalition's diplomatic approach to security has created a situation where predators like the Void Reapers can operate with virtual impunity, knowing that any response will be slow, predictable, and constrained by bureaucratic protocols. Commander Kim stepped forward with her datapad. We've been monitoring pirate activity throughout the Outer Rim territories. In the past year alone, they've attacked 57 civilian installations, captured or destroyed 23 cargo vessels, and killed or enslaved over 2,000 innocent beings. The Coalition's response has consisted primarily of strongly worded diplomatic protests. The numbers were damning, and SciFi felt a growing sense of shame at her own government's inaction. She had known that piracy was a problem in the outer regions, but she had assumed that the Coalition was addressing it through appropriate channels. What are you proposing? She asked. Reynolds smiled, and this time the expression was warm rather than predatory. We're proposing partnership, Dr. SciFi. The Coalition has resources, knowledge, and diplomatic networks that humanity lacks. Humanity has capabilities that the Coalition apparently needs. It seems like a natural basis for cooperation. The membership requirements is based on the assumption that Class 1-2 Death World species cannot develop stable, peaceful civilizations, Dr. Webb interrupted. We're prepared to demonstrate that assumption is incorrect, but we need partners within the Coalition who are willing to sponsor our application and support our case before the Galactic Council. The request hung in the air between them. SciFi realized that this was the real purpose of the human rescue mission, not just to save Harmony, 7, but to establish the foundation for a fundamental shift in galactic politics. The humans had deliberately chosen to reveal their capabilities in a context where they could be seen as protectors rather than conquerors. You're asking me to recommend Coalition membership for humanity based on a single engagement, she said. I'm asking you to consider the evidence objectively, Reynolds replied. Today, 47 researchers are alive because humanity possesses the capability and willingness to respond to threats that the Coalition's existing security apparatus cannot handle. The question is whether the galactic community is more interested in maintaining bureaucratic precedent or protecting innocent lives. Morthen looked up from his console. Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The energy signatures match Coalition patrol vessels. Looks like the Altarian fleet finally received our distress call. Reynolds nodded calmly. We expected that. Dr. Webb, are you prepared for the diplomatic component of this mission? The attaché straightened his uniform and picked up his data case. I've been preparing for this conversation for 3 years, Captain. The Coalition patrol will want to know why human vessels are in neutral space, why we engaged in combat without authorization, and what our intentions are regarding future security operations. And your answers? The truth, Webb replied simply. We were responding to a distress call from civilian researchers. We engaged in defensive operations against pirate raiders, and our future intentions depend entirely on whether the Coalition is interested in a more effective approach to galactic security. Through the observation deck, SciFi could see the approaching Coalition vessels. Sleek, elegant ships, designed for diplomatic missions and scientific exploration, utterly unlike the angular, purposeful warships that had saved her station. The contrast was symbolic of a larger conflict between different philosophies of how civilized species should interact with an often uncivilized galaxy. Captain Reynolds, she said finally, I will be submitting a full report of today's events to the Altarian Collective and the Coalition Council. My recommendation will be that humanity's application for membership be given immediate and serious consideration. Thank you, Dr. SciFi. That's all we can ask for. However, she continued, I must warn you that the Coalition's bureaucracy moves slowly, and there are species within the Council who will be deeply uncomfortable with humanity's military capabilities. Reynolds' smile returned, carrying a hint of the confidence that had destroyed 17 pirate ships in 12 minutes. Dr. SciFi, we're not asking the Coalition to be comfortable with our capabilities. We're asking them to be grateful for them. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ship, Zephyr reflected on the events of the past few hours. She had witnessed the most decisive military engagement in recent galactic history, discovered that one of the galaxy's supposedly primitive species possessed technology and tactical sophistication that surpassed most coalition worlds, and been asked to sponsor humanity's entry into galactic civilization. But more than that, she had seen a glimpse of what the galaxy could become if its civilized species were willing to acknowledge that sometimes, in a universe filled with predators and pirates, the most civilized response was overwhelming, decisive force applied by those willing and able to use it. The SOS had been sent to allies, seeking the diplomatic, measured response that coalition protocols demanded. Instead, it had been answered by Deathworlders who understood that sometimes the most humanitarian thing you can do is eliminate those who prey upon the innocent. As the human ships powered up their drives and prepared to return to their patrol routes, Zephyr wondered if the galaxy was ready for that lesson. Whether it was ready or not, she suspected it was about to learn it. The age of diplomatic solutions to security problems was ending. The age of human involvement in galactic affairs was about to begin. And after today's demonstration, she was no longer certain which prospect was more significant for the future of interstellar civilization.